Postponed meeting of the Executive Board for this month of March 2025. Thank you everyone, first of all, for coming here. We had to postpone this meeting, as you know. So to people who gave their availability and to everyone who made it happen, Peter, Vilma, Niamh and Tony, thank you so much for your help, for allowing this meeting to go ahead. First thing first, apologies for absence. What do we got?
Thank you, Chair. There are apologies from Dermot O'Brien and Andy Williams.
Thank you, Nick, and thank you so much as well for helping us find a room for today's postponed meeting. Item number 2, declarations of interest. Anyone? I can see nothing. If anything comes to mind later, obviously at any point that something comes to mind, please let me know. Item number 3, minutes. The last meeting that we had was held on the 7th of November, is that correct? Oh, feels like it should be earlier than, well, anyway. The last meeting that we had was held on the 7th of November. Have we had a look at the minutes and are we happy for me to sign them as an accurate record? If there is any dissent, can anyone shout now? I can hear none. So I will sign those as an accurate record whenever I am reminded to do so. Item number 4, public questions. We have had 2 public questions to this meeting, which are split as follows. We have got one on the Madingley Road walking and cycling improvements and one on the Fulbourn Greenway. We've got them published as part of today's agenda and we will put them at the start of the relevant agenda item. Obviously, any problems, anyone, let me know. Item number 5, feedback from the Joint Assembly. Councillor Tim Bick, thank you so much for being with us as usual. The meeting of the Assembly was held on the 20th of February. We have Tim's usual report as part of today's papers, which is always very gratefully received. And I will ask Tim to present at the beginning of every agenda item, as we usually do. Item number 6, the best and most amazing item on our agenda, as always, the quarterly progress report. We are going to have an officer presentation, we will hear the Assembly feedback, and then we will debate the item as per usual. Niamh, would you like to take it away?
Thank you, Chair. So this will be remarkably quick. As you'll see, there are no specific recommendations. We're asking the board to consider the progress across the programme, which is set out across the paper, and very happy to take any questions or points of detail, Chair, when the time is right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Niamh. That was remarkably brief. Now, then when this went in front of the Assembly, what kind of feedback did we have, Councillor Bick?
Well, as Niamh said, there were no decisions expected of you on this item, and therefore what I'm reporting to you in my written report is a range of comments that people made that were stimulated by the report, some of which were tangential to the actual items being discussed, although valuable nevertheless. I mean, I think I'm mainly inclined to say just take the comments as they're written in the report. There was a request by one member that local government reorganisation should be a regular recurring item on our agenda. I don't think that was shared by more than the person asking the question. And obviously, we would hope that anything relevant to the GCP that arose about that subject would come up anyway. But I think that most members felt it was most important we just got on with our job, which was clear.
Now, that all sounds great. Thank you very much, Tim, and it sounds about right. I mean, I think we've got as clear of an idea at this point in time as we possibly have in relation to the QPR, so it's excellent that we can see the progress as it is. So I welcome this, and thank you so much, Niamh, for the usual brilliant job. Do we have any comments or questions for Niamh? Brian?
Yeah, thank you. So we've got mayoral and county council elections coming up on May the 1st. And I see that there was comment coming back about the Gateway Review. And so I wanted to ask a question because there is some discussion about the continued existence of the GCP and whether or not, or what would happen under circumstances where somebody wanted to dissolve not only the county council and the district councils, but the GCP to boot.
Would anyone like to, I mean, I can give my perspective on this, but I think maybe a factual response
I
first,
think
if
an
anybody's got an
impartial
idea.
response from-
So the constituent authorities, South Cambridgeshire District, Cambridge City Council and the Cambridgeshire County Council, were they to change in some form of unitarisation as is being discussed, then there would be a transfer of function and assets to the new organisation. So the expectation would be that the city deal arrangements, including assets, voting rights and everything else, would transfer, like everything else would transfer, to whatever new authority covers the geographic area of the city deal, which is the Greater Cambridge area. That's helpful.
So, just following on from that, there's no opportunity, particularly for anybody that would be an incoming mayor, would have any power over dissolution of the organisation. Is that correct?
The mayor has no jurisdiction over the city deal and is not a signatory of the city deal. The mayor, by convention and at the request of the board and the agreement of the board, has invited as a non-voting participant, but otherwise has no, as I say, no jurisdiction over the GCP.
Thank you for the clarification. Very useful.
I take it that was mostly illuminating. It's also, you know, it is also worth noting that we are, irrespective of our environment almost, we are reaching the end of the city deal, so we are in the very sort of delivery heavy phase of the situation. There is a question, which we don't know the answer to yet, as to what happens with the Gateway Review, but if one assumes the LGR will be, decisions related to LGR and clarity regarding what's going to happen in the geography will come after clarity regarding what happens with the Gateway Review, there will almost be nothing to dissolve. Like, it will be a question of finish the money that you've got, or if you were to decide to not finish to use it, then it goes back, presumably. So, you know, that's essentially, you know, nobody can lay claim to it other than the purpose for which it was given. The grant money that we will hopefully have after the last tranche of checks are performed. So this is essentially where we are, and actually, you know, as Peter said, it will be a decision for whoever covers the geography by 2030. We shall find out. Are there any more questions for Niamh? Or any more comments about the QPR? Yes, Mike.
The review the report says the Gateway Review is likely to be in the spring. Any clarity about the dates, Niamh?
Thanks, Mike, and no further clarity yet. No, and we'll keep you updated as soon as we hear anything from colleagues in government.
I'm sure that we are all waiting with, you know, extreme excitement about it, but, you know, they're working on it. I'm sure they'll let us know.
I just note, Chair, that it's astronomical spring starts tomorrow, 9:05.
Trust me, I know that. But, you know, spring can mean almost anything. It can also sometimes mean autumn. But anyway, we shall find out. Anything else on the QPR from anybody? If we are happy, the recommendation in front of us is to note and comment. We have commented. I'm going to assume that we are happy to note. And therefore, unless somebody dissents, we shall take the noting of the QPR as carried. And thank you so much, Niamh, not just for this QPR, but for all of them. We will bind them up into a book at some point. They are extremely interesting to read. Thank you, everyone, for the discussion. We will move on to item number 7, which is Madingley Road. We are now on page 65 of our agenda pack for those following. We have one public question on this item, which we will take first. This will be answered, and then we will receive an officer presentation, which I believe Peter is going to take it away. We will then hear from the Joint Assembly about it, and then debate the item as per usual. Now, the first question that we have on today's agenda is from CamCycle. I am told that we have Anna Williams on Teams. Is that correct? Hi, Anna. I can see you.
Hello.
So, assuming that you can hear me, you have the usual 3 minutes. So, whenever you are ready, please start your question.
Thank you. So I'm speaking today on behalf of CamCycle and our around 1,700 local members. So our question on Madingley Road is, at the Joint Assembly, we raised concerns about the glacial pace and disappointing development of the Madingley Road scheme. We noticed that the latest design has a reduced scope, weaker protection for cyclists, and still many unresolved issues. We frequently ask technical questions about scheme elements, but rarely receive satisfactory answers from the GCP. One key issue, we believe, is the lack of standardisation across the organisation. GCP project managers are often appointed for their expertise in project management and delivery, but may have less of a technical design background. As a result, the GCP is overly reliant on design consultants to provide consistency and vision across its schemes. In our opinion, these consultants are failing to deliver time and time again. And this is reading on behalf of my colleague, Josh. So he puts, having worked as a design consultant for over a decade, he knows that the best way to extract value from consultants is to be an intelligent client, by which I mean to have a deep understanding of their work and processes, making it easier to hold them accountable and ensuring that substandard work is immediately recognised and addressed. While this may happen on a piecemeal basis within the GCP, it does not appear to be institutionally embedded, and lessons rarely seem to be learned from one project to another. Furthermore, while there are clear roles for programme and finance oversight, no position appears to have a clear directive over the design and technical aspects of all GCP schemes. To improve the Madingley Road scheme through the detailed design phase, we ask whether the GCP could appoint a technical director or active travel design specialist who can ensure that the design quality of Madingley Road and also across the entire transport portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for your question. Peter, would you like to answer?
Thank you, Anna. Thanks for the question. I mean, as you and CamCycle are aware, we've now delivered a number of this type of award-winning scheme, and I'm thinking particularly of Histon Road and Milton Road. Designs, as you're aware, are subject to technical review by a number of disciplines, particularly within the County Council, structures, active travel team, lighting, signals, and the like. And we do extensively consult and engage on the designs. And I think also important to reflect that as a result of a request by the Joint Assembly, the designs are now independently reviewed by Active Travel England. So we have an awful lot of checks and balances in the system. We look very much forward to working with CamCycle on the next stage of the consultation, should the board to agree, to continue our good work on delivering this type of scheme. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, for the answer to the question. I think we'll come back to some of those points when we do the executive board debate. I certainly would like to make some comments, but it was a very good question. Thank you, Anna, for it. Now, I think, Peter, if you would like to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, just a couple of sort of headline points on this. So the report provides an update on the work on Madingley Road, principally around two areas. One is the integration with the large local plan sites along that corridor and making sure that they work seamlessly together. After all, it is the reason why the city is here, to make sure that we support sites such as Eddington and West Cambridge coming forward. It also reports on the local engagement we undertook on the principle of some of the designs, and that engagement showed very strong support for the developments in that direction. So what principally the board is being asked to do today is to note that work, to agree to a further detailed design work being undertaken on these scheme elements, and then for that to go to a full consultation, including all local stakeholders like CamCycle, and then that will be brought together back to you for your consideration in due course. Hopefully that's helpful, Chair.
Thank you, Peter. That is very, very helpful. Before we start debating this item, would we like to hear what the Joint Assembly had to say on Madingley Road?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on this you are expected to take a decision, so we focused mainly on that, which was to say that we supported the propositions in front of you to take this to the next stage. There was a rider to that when this does go into the next stage of consultation, which as Peter describes it, where it would do, some attention is given to the way the alignment and the detail of the alignment is actually presented to people. Because on the basis of information I think that we felt we had, that was not easy to follow. And some sort of overlay approach, especially given that this has been a subject that people have seen repeated versions of. So when they're criticising it as worse than something or better than something, it's kind of convenient to understand whether that's the status quo or various different iterations between then and now. But there was a minor discussion about whether Copenhagen crossings and floating bus stops were appropriate, but I think most members accept those as now the norm for new infrastructure in Cambridge, and that was not a concern shared more widely. And there was a concern raised about maintenance of the scheme, which is in a sense not different, I think, from maintenance of any scheme like this, and I believe we've been assured of a focused report on that shortly. Be useful to have confirmation of that, please.
Thank you, Tim, for that. Do we have any questions or comments for Peter on the Madingley Road report? Brian?
So briefly, I think most people are welcoming the proposal to sort out Madingley Road, and particularly in preparation of extensions of Cambridge West, where obviously the levels of traffic will continue to grow. One of the questions I have is about traffic flow. At the moment, I get quite frustrated if I miss the signal at the entrance to Eddington, and I'm wondering how many minutes I shall be waiting. So very selfishly, it's probably a question for Dan, because we know from that signalisation trial that we did at Robin Hood's Junction in Cherry Hinton, that we're getting cleverer about what signalisation can look like. So we're moving on from MOVA and Scoot systems, or combinations of them, I think perhaps was in Cherry Hinton's case. And so just perhaps we can just get a small commentary on that issue of whether we anticipate being able to improve the traffic flow.
Thank you, Brian. If Dan would like to make, I mean, I know we have item 11 coming up, and I think we'll talk about that quite extensively. But in the meantime, do you have any comments in specific respect to what was just asked?
So I should say, Chair, Dan will pick up the sort of general signals work later on. In terms of Madingley Road, the answer is yes. That is exactly what we'll be, aspiring to achieve, because that enhancing that flow gives us some of the capacity that means we can put more facilities in for pedestrians and cyclists, and getting that balance right has been one of the things we've been working through, not just with the Highways Authority, but particularly with Highways England and the interrelationship with the motorway junction. So the short answer is yes, and I think Dan might bring some of those opportunities to life later on.
Sure, I mean, leave it till a little later if we need any more details. But I think the answer yes is the one I was looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian and Peter, for that. Any more questions or comments on Madingley Road? Yes, Mike.
Just a quickie, it's, I think, a question, and it relates back to Anna's question from CamCycle. If everything goes smoothly, these things don't tend to, but if everything was to go smoothly, when would be the date that work would start on this?
So I think we're looking at the remainder of this calendar year for technical work and consultation. I think the two principal issues around when work will start is how does the consultation land? So if there's broad levels of support, certainly on key elements of it, that will happen, you know, a lot quicker. And the other element has always been, you know, acquiring land. And what we've tried to do now is move to a stage where we think we can acquire land by negotiation, and again, that sort of speeds up delivery. So I would think realistically, we're looking at probably 18, 24 months before we're on site. One caveat is that road space on Cambridge roads is at a premium. We are beginning to feel a bit of a pinch in terms of our ability to access that road space because there's an awful lot of other things going on. And I have said in this forum before that you know, it's a devil of a job trying to manage that road space. So I think we're also going to be constrained by when we could physically get on the ground.
Thank you, Peter, for that. And that actually brings me to what I was going to say in terms of, you know, some of the comments I picked up from what Anna was saying earlier. We all wish that the pace of some of these things was a lot less glacial. Like we are not, nobody's sitting here sort of obstructing this and hasn't for some time now. And also our contractors and our consultants and everybody else who we engage to complement the skills that we might not have or the capacity that we might not have. And this isn't, I don't think, in any way strange for us. In fact, I think we are at the upper scale of the kind of capacity in terms of, you know, availability in-house, of expertise and people being able to do the job. We do have some things that we have to rely on external help for, and these people aren't overall doing a bad job. But some of the challenges that we present them with are extremely head-scratchy. And this is one of them, because actually, you know, to lay something through open countryside where there's lots and lots of space isn't a problem until you start asking the question, you know, when you're coming into Cambridge and where do you go? And we know that to be a problem, and we expect good answers to those questions, and sometimes that is met with problems, technical problems, and also public challenges to some of the things that we might propose to do. So that might be behind some of the delays that we have seen. And I'm really hoping that we can just essentially use the process as we know it and make sure that it doesn't go any more slowly than it needs to. So I'm hoping that this will be the case for this. And we are hopefully going to make these decisions now, and this will occupy us or our officers for the rest of this year, and we will see some progress made very soon. Anybody else? Yes, Mike.
It's the same point. Are there, given all the indications of the government's desire to move ahead swiftly on growth, and bearing in mind that the questions both from CamCycle but also the points that Elise has just made, are the representations that we should be making to government and to other bodies in terms of trying to enhance the pace of projects such as this? And if there are representations, who should be doing it and what should they be?
I'll come back to it. Can I just take a step back? So the challenge on this scheme has been effectively knitting together the ambition for walking and cycling improvements along Madingley Road with two extremely large growth sites on the corridor. Because where we cannot get ourselves into is to put something in at considerable public cost, but also public pain, because we all know what happens when we get on site and that's a busy road anyway, without putting people digging it up. And then we have to change it, rip it out, or do something different. So the key challenge on this corridor has been making sure we're now where we get to a position where we can do that. Now, we're now in the position where this scheme is now on a more regular flight path. As I've seen, sort of there's a stage of design, there's a stage of consultation, and then we'll go through procurement. So that's been the key element of this. The challenge on delivery of this, there is no magic wand regarding construction of of online construction. We have a lot of ambitions, as do many others, for things that we want to do in the city environment. You can't possibly do all of these things in a very short time frame. You certainly can't do them at the same time. I'm sure our residents and communities wouldn't thank us if they had 2 radial routes dug up. So there's a real balancing act that we've got to work through with county and other colleagues as to how we can deliver this going forward. I mean, certainly in our procurement, we're going to have to think about, you know, how far can we stretch delivery days? Well, great if we could work 18 hours a day, but that's going to have an impact on local residents. So there's an awful lot of consideration we've got to do to this. I mean, I think if there is something obvious, Mike, then we would be happy to bring that back either to the board or to constituent councils. But particularly for, as I say, more online improvements, it's just difficult.
I'm not suggesting it's not difficult. I think what I'm asking, I suppose, is where does the growth company fit in? Where's the development corporation fit in? And how do we access government encouragement? Because when government wish to act swiftly at the moment, they tend to, particularly in Cambridge. And so I think the answer is maybe not answer for now, but are there things and pressures we could put elsewhere? Because it sounds like from what you're saying, you would be keen to move more swiftly. Therefore, it's what can we do to aid that process and that speed?
So maybe if I take an action to speak in particular with county street management colleagues, because I think there are opportunities there, but we need to, they need a considered response rather than me just making it on the hoof and answer to a question. So if I take that action, and I'll report back.
Thank you, Peter.
I think just on that issue, we're all very conscious of the amount of development that's going on and the impact of roads, but also the infrastructure that is going either in, under them, alongside. With the example of Abraham Road towards the Park and Ride, we made strenuous efforts to make sure that the path was only dug up once and laid, but did a cable provider want to do something else? So we've got to be really careful for our residents, don't we? And so it's pleasing to hear you say how much trouble you go to. And I think street works are an important part of that because they are manfully trying to manage that to the best of their ability, despite some of the, for example, utility companies that seem to working in volte-face.
Very good. Thank you, Brian. Any more questions or comments? I mean, I think in general, I would quite like to see this getting on, as I think we would all. It is very interesting, actually, that we should bear in mind, the growth that this kind of project is serving, and I think it will be useful to hear whether there's anything in particular that we can bring to the discussions with the growth company, etc. But at the moment, I think this is a reasonably practical challenge, and it's just a question of can we get on with it, and can we start doing things so that the disruption ends quickly. If there are no more questions, the recommendations in front of us are to note the progress that is being reported in the report, to agree to take forward revised proposals to the detailed design phase, to note the public engagement to date, and to agree on a further full consultation on the final design. And as a result of that, the development of the outline business case and the final proposals, which will come back to this board when they are ready. Do I have any dissent on the recommendations in front of us? I can see none. Shall I therefore take them as carried? Thank you very much, everyone, for that. Agenda item number 8, the greenways. We are now on page 131 of our agenda. We have had no questions on this item, so we will have a presentation. We will hear the Joint Assembly feedback, and the Executive Board will debate this report after that. Thomas, would you like to take it away?
Thank you very much, Chair. So the substantive part of this paper is to update you on the Greenways programme that we will be delivering during 2025, and you can see a table in section 4.1 that sets out by Greenway what we are proposing to deliver this year. And then there are three other recommendations. One is around changes to design for the Melbourne and Meldriff villages, which form part of the Melbourne Greenway. And those changes to design will be subject to a traffic regulation order. And there's a little bit of detail on that in the paper. Note the delivery of wayfinding along the Linton Greenway. So this will be a trial of the wayfinding, which you previously approved. They will be going up in the summer, and we will be getting feedback from the public on that wayfinding when it's in place. And then lastly, to agree to progress development along Burrells Walk, especially with the bridge on Burrells Walk as part of the Comberton Greenway. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. That is a very, very impressive report. I'm very, very happy to see it. Tim, what did the Assembly have to say on it?
Again, the proposals, the recommendations you've got in front of you were supported by the Assembly. There were a series of points made, all of which are in my report. On the, just to pick out a couple of those, the wayfinding initiative starting in at Linton, on the Linton Greenway, there was a lot of interest in how that could incorporate safety of use guidance for people. And of course, as the conversation went on, there were so many aspects to that, then it looked more like a book hanging off a lamppost than something that people could easily assimilate as they go by. And so I think there was a readiness to see that something like this needed to be simple, but there was a keenness to try and cover such things as keep left or pay attention to sort of mutual visibility, especially in dusk or after dark. And I believe officers are taking that away and going to try and incorporate that. It would be maybe interesting to see with a few weeks' thought whether that's gone anywhere. On the Melbourne Greenway, we received thanks from the local member for the work so far on that Greenway. There was strong support for the Burrells Walk measure, and if anything, people arguing for that to be a wider bridge than even that is being proposed. On the overall programme, we came back to the the recurrent issue on the greenways that that they seem to invite a lot of scrutiny because they involve a lot of detail, and a lot of that is acutely local, and yet they are also used by users on a sort of systemic basis, people who may not know the area. I think members of the Assembly find it quite difficult to kind of oversee that level of scrutiny from both respects on these greenways, and there has been a suggestion to help that Active Travel England would somehow have a role before schemes come to us, so that they could provide comments or a sort of audit or loose audit of some kind, which could kind of guide us to the key issues. And I think that really would help us all focus on how to add value best to these important greenways. And then finally, the question of vehicles gaining access to the greenways. So this was mentioned in respect of Mere Way, where I think technically is not one of our greenways, but I think the point actually serves as a lookout to those that are our greenways, in that if they are for cycling and walking, then we should make sure that's the way they stay. And it is really important not only to make sure they're ideal for cyclists and walkers, but also they're not ideal for people to bring vehicles onto them as well. So would be helpful to have an indication that that is something that we are going to find a way of doing.
Thank you very much, Tim. That was very, very interesting. Are there any comments from the board on this report? Brian?
So the issue of bridleways, for example, in the context of what Councillor Bix just referred to, where if they're going to be maintained as a bridleway, they have to have a width of access that makes them accessible to four-wheel quad bikes, for example. So actually managing that there's a practical difficulty. I don't know if any of the colleagues are able to comment on that. And then the other thing is, I think overall we must be pleased and delighted actually with the progress that we've made with our greenways. I just want to have a better sense as quickly as possible that we'll join the missing bits. So there are things that are in place now which unfortunately tail off and you don't really know where to go and you have to get back on the road, for example. So I look forward to the day where we can say all those bits have been joined up, but thanks in the meantime for the sterling work that the Greenways team has been doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Is there a question to answer? Does anybody? Yes.
I think just to come back on the access controls. So firstly, we're looking to take lessons from the Mere Way, and we're aware that officers of the County Council are looking at what measures they can put in place there. So we're watching that very closely so we can learn from that. But as well as that, the view of bollards, drop-down bollards, those kind of things, you know, what can we put in place? As you say, it's a very careful balance between restricting access, which obviously we don't want to do, but also stopping the people or access for vehicles we don't want down there. So it's just getting that balance right.
Thank you, Thomas. And I think I should mention, actually, as the County Council representative here, we recently, by which I mean the middle of February, met to discuss the Waterbeach busway. And there was a question that in the end we were unable to take for a combination of issues, including the fact that the questioner themselves were unable to attend the meeting, which was very sad. But we did get to see the question, which was about Mere Way. And some of the issues with, you know, having this all singing, all dancing, wonderful cycling infrastructure that then doesn't get used because people don't feel safe because there's other vehicles that shouldn't be on it. So I think it's very important to appreciate that this is, you know, for the people that we are trying to give this to and the people that we're trying to, you know, give good infrastructure to, that they also don't, you know, that this is an actual problem. So I'm really hoping that we can do something about that. And it's not just cars, obviously cars ought to be relatively easy to stop. It's motorbikes and some of those hybrid things which do create a risk for people. And another thing that was brought up about Mere Way, which once again, we shouldn't be talking about it as if it was ours, because it is not, but it's the lighting and the general level of, you know, you really are, you know, if you're supposed to be spending a long time there during winter months, for example, commuting, then you want to feel safe. Not just that you wouldn't be run over, but also that you can see where you're going and the people can see you. So all of these things are very, very important, and I hope that we can note them and work cooperatively as a system, because Mere Way will be part of that network, even if we don't directly manage it. Anything else? It always gladdens my heart, I have to say, to see the map on page 132. If Thomas wouldn't mind me putting him on the spot, and you'll see why I'm asking this in a moment, how many miles does that amount to?
In kilometres, it's 150 kilometres, roughly.
Thank you for using decimal. That's very, very good, and it is noted. But it is very, very impressive, and we should be shouting about it. And I am hoping that we have got most of those 150 kilometres on the way, if not there already. So that is wonderful, and I shall come back to that later in the meeting. Are there any further questions or comments? I see none. We are being requested to note the Greenway programme for delivery this year, note the changes specifically relating to Melbourne and Meldreth, which we've got TROs to look forward to, the wayfinding along the Linton Greenway and the trial thereof, and Burrell's Walk as well. So those are recommendations A to D. Do I hear any dissent? I do not. Shall we therefore take them all as carried? Thank you so much for the work to date. Thank you, Thomas, for everything as usual. And I get the feeling as we move on to item number 9 that we shall be hearing more from you, Thomas. Item number 9 is the Fulbourn Greenway. We do have a public question on it, which we will take first. It will be responded to. Then we will receive presentation from Thomas, feedback from Tim, and debate the item as usual. So we again have Anna Williams we should have on this item. Anna, when you're ready, you know what to do.
Thank you. So again, speaking on behalf of CamCycle and our around 1,700 members. So we'd like to say it's absolutely excellent to see that the officer recommendations on this item have been adjusted following the meeting of the Joint Assembly, with the GCP now agreeing to support and collaborate with partners to explore proposals along the entire length of Mill Road. We're really, really pleased with this decision. Thank you. As we stated in our question to the Joint Assembly, Mill Road is more than just a greenway scheme. It is a major corridor for active travel and a key part of Cambridge's transport network. The GCP has taken a bold and proactive step forward, but for the best possible scheme to emerge here, it needs the full support of the City Council, County Council and the Mayor. We therefore ask the authorities represented here today to identify your most enthusiastic, engaged and talented officers to form a working group with the GCP officers. This group should collaborate with local members and stakeholders to initiate a co-design process, one that genuinely listens to and engages with the community in shaping the future of Mill Road. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And I should say enthusiastic, engaged and talented describes every single one of our officers to a T, and you would expect me to say nothing else. But thank you very much for the question, and you know, it's good that we've had some good engagement and that it has been reflected in the evolution of our papers. This is how it's always meant to be, so I'm very glad to see it working. Thomas, are you responding to the question?
Yeah, just a quick short response, Chair, which is just to say thank you for the question, and as the paper sets out, we will take that forward subject to board approval.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Anna, for being here. We will take something relating to recommendation D when I do have a couple of points I'd like to make in the discussion. We will do that later on. Tim. No, not Tim. Tom, you still have to introduce the report. So if you could do that, and then we'll hear Tim. Sorry about that.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this is an update on the Fulbourn Greenway. In terms of phases 1 and 2 of the Fulbourn Greenway, I won't go into too much detail. An update is provided in section 4 of your report on those parts of the Greenway. The predominant part of this paper is about phase 3 of the Greenway and the proposal to change the alignment to go down Mill Road. As you can see in the recommendations, we propose to move it and the budget that's associated with it to working on Mill Road. And we have, on reflection from the Joint Assembly, updated recommendation D to say that we will work with partners to explore proposals for improvements along the entirety of Mill Road rather than just up to Mill Road Bridge, which is what was previously put forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas, for that very much. And I'm assuming, Tim, that the Assembly is happy with what's in front of us today. That was quite a nice outcome. Did you have a good discussion about this?
Yeah, yes, indeed. So we supported the recommendations that you've got. There was a particular discussion about the phase 1 before we get to the later phases. I think, from what I can understand, there was a confluence of issues from both our Greenway proposal in Fulbourn Village and the County Council's 20 mile an hour introduction in the same place, and a resulting concern around speed bumps, which although the matter was it's still within the consultation period while we were talking, there was a request for some clarification to be offered to the parish council about what was coming from where and why, and whether the particular appeal we had was for fewer speed bumps than appeared to be coming. So I'm not sure whether that has happened with the parish council in the weeks past, but it was committed. On phase 2, which includes the Tins Path, which goes next to and over the railway line, there is an obvious relationship with East West Rail, which was flagged by members, and the request was, how is that going to happen? How is that going to happen? And I think, although we got an answer that there were consultations going on between officers and East West Rail, I suppose the follow-up question, which I'm not sure anyone actually asked, was, so does that mean this is kicked into the 2040s before we get what we might want alongside that part of this greenway? Because I imagine that East West Rail is going to be a very lengthy process if we're trying to integrate anything with them. And then the discussion on phase 3, I think that we heard and discussed the ambitions that people have for Mill Road in general. I think no particular disagreement about them and the need for them. There was pleasure that the decision now to route this part of the Fulbourn Greenway up the lower part of Mill Road it's beneficial towards the aim for Mill Road in total. It means that the allocated budget from the GCP can effectively go into the pool, which needs to be a wider pool for the improvements along Mill Road. The other changes along Mill Road have not come from the GCP, they've come from the County Council, but it obviously means that the financial contribution that wouldn't have been there if we'd followed the off Mill Road path to the station can now go into the kitty and make that much more meaningful. And I'm pleased too that the recommendations that the results for you today include that more actively now to work with the other partners to use our contribution effectively in the context of an overall scheme of improvement. That's it.
Tim, thank you very, very much for that. Do we have comments or questions for Thomas and everybody? Yes, Mike.
First of all, probably a declaration of interest, actually, just realised. I'm a member of CamCycle. I probably should have said that at the start of the meeting.
I'm sure that's now been noted. So
but particularly bearing in mind where the questions came from. But secondly, I'm the ward councillor for Petersfield, which is obviously directly affected by the proposals that are within this particular recommendation. Well, not directly affected, but indirectly affected by the proposals that are made within this. Having said that, I thoroughly recommend and welcome the change of the recommendations today. I think it makes a whole heap of sense, bearing in mind now we seem to be coming to a conclusion, hopefully, over the issues around the bridge, to therefore move the route of the Fulbourn Greenway in relation to Mill Road. I think I also welcome the ideas to bring together officers around transport, and I've had conversations with Peter previously about whether it's feasible to have a broader master planning thing beyond just the transport implications for Mill Road, which I think could sit nicely alongside any work that's indicated here, without wishing to hold that work that's proposed here today. So I think it's wholly good news and welcome it, and so thank you very much for the work that's been undertaken to take this forward, both by yourself but also, I have to say, by the Assembly in terms of amending the recommendations. Thank you very much.
actually just said the bit that I was going to add, which was this has demonstrated the value of the Assembly as our scrutiny body of coming through with positive suggestions that we can incorporate. And it also goes some way to counter the argument that we're somehow undemocratic, because the members that sit on the Assembly are members of our constituent councils, and they are the ones that are doing the scrutinisation of our policies on our actions. So thank you to Tim and his Assembly member colleagues.
Thank you, Brian, for that. Obviously, completely correct. No, I think it's very, very good work. I mean, there are a few things I'd like to say. First of all, absolutely wholly good news. I mean, this is exactly how it should be. We are very happy that we can, make efficiencies and savings and make sure that we get, therefore, something extra to invest in a place that really needs it very badly. So that's really, really good. For the lower part of Mill Road, where the Greenway is now being redirected to go, I think this is going to be really good news. The Greenway itself was always meant, Thomas, correct me please if I am wrong, it was meant to go from Fulbourn into Cambridge and into Cambridge Station to connect with the Chisholm Trail, which is what it will now do. There is obviously the other part of Mill Road, which is not on that route. I absolutely welcome and support the idea that we should look at the entirety of Mill Road, despite the fact that it wasn't on the Greenway map to begin with. And the fact that it is not on the Greenway map to begin with, obviously it does present us with a little bit of a conundrum and a little bit of caution that we have to exercise. Intentionally, our City Deal programme objectives were written very broadly. It's extremely easy to make the case for any kind of active travel improvement anywhere in the geography of Greater Cambridge, and sometimes outside of it, that it is worthy of investment from our grant because it fits with the objectives. That is very, very easy to argue. Which means that it would be very, very easy for us to run out of money very, very quickly if we were going to do everything that is a good idea, because there's a lot that is a good idea, and this is a good idea. So it is my hope that the constituent authorities will work together to make sure that we all contribute the way that we should to something that is in the common good. So, GCP will be absolutely working with partners to make sure that we contribute. And that Mill Road becomes a good part of our network in its entirety, not just the bit that takes us to the station. At the same time, we will not be able to fund everything ourselves, and this is very, very important that people understand this. And there's a lot that we can make a small amount go if we get buy-in. So this will be our job. And, it's very easy, and I've heard it far too many times to be comfortable with it, for people to come up and say, oh, this fits with your objectives, therefore we would like to ask GCP to use its grant for blah, blah, blah. I wish we had more money, but, unfortunately this is where we are. But within that context and within that understanding that we're going to be responsible people and all chip in, this is a very, very, very good piece of work to do, and I'm very glad that we will be participating in it. In terms of the Greenway itself, I am glad that it was looked at properly by the Assembly, and I think a lot of the debate, which I caught up with afterwards, was very, very interesting, so I'm grateful to them for that. Do we have anything else specific that we'd like to say on the Greenway itself, or ask Thomas any questions, anything at all? In which case, we have got the recommendations in front of us, which are to agree to the new alignment, which we knew we'd had a little bit of a trailer last time we met that this would come to us, and it has. So we will agree to a new alignment, which means that we will go via Mill Road. We will reallocate the existing funding to this new alignment in its entirety, which ought to allow us to then agree to work with the rest of the stakeholders in our geography to bring together the design and any work that we can meaningfully help support along the entire length of Mill Road. Do I have any dissent on the recommendations as they stand? I see none, therefore we shall take them as carried. Thank you everyone concerned, thank you to the Assembly and to Thomas and everyone for the work that has been done. Item number 10, the skills program. I can feel my mood lifting already. I love the skills program, as you know. We have not had any questions on this, so we will have Niamh present the report to us. We will hear the Joint Assembly feedback and then debate it as we usually do. So, Niamh, would you like to take it away?
Thanks, Chair. Hopefully good news and straightforward. So the board asked us to try and extend the current skills work that you're funding. That work runs out at the end of this month. In order to do that, we carried out a compliant procurement process. Having completed that process, we have a preferred bidder. That bidder is Form the Future. They're currently delivering the skills work right now, so this would essentially be an extension of the work that they're getting on with. We're ready to appoint them, and they are ready to start on the first day of April, should the board be minded to agree that. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Niamh, thank you very much. Yes, indeed, good news. Tim, would you like to tell us what the Assembly have to say?
Yeah, equal enthusiasm for the skills programme in the Assembly, and satisfaction about the outlook for this work to continue. I think that it was important to us that to hear that in particular the combined authority was operating in sync and in partnership with our move for the next stage, because I think people foresee that as an important relationship for after the GCP has ceased funding. And in that same context, we noted that the skills board would take a view on the next phase of the contract, agreeing the targets and performance indicators. So that was useful to know too. There was a question about the fact that the work with adults looked like it was reducing, and indeed it is reducing, but that the reason for that is in accordance with demand, and that it doesn't include the 16 to 24-year-old group of adults, which for which it's still continuing, and there is sufficient demand. Yep. In the sense that you have decisions to take, we supported them.
Thank you very much indeed. Tim, are there questions or comments for Niamh? Yes, Brian.
Yeah, just a quick comment about the requirement for continued skills training, particularly in line or in view of the Cambridge Growth Company. We know that skills are in shortage in many areas, but we've also conversely got nearly 1 million people in NEETs, not in education or training. So this is a really important part of that response that is needed. So I'm just welcoming the extension of our involvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Anything else? Yes, Mike.
Yeah, just to say thank you and delighted to support the proposals. I still would like to see the CPCA take on greater responsibility, I have to be honest. I think it fits more naturally within their area of responsibility, and I look forward to seeing how we progress that relationship over the coming 2 years.
Thank you, Mike. Are there any comments on that? I mean, I think I agree to the extent that, you know, this definitely something that, you know, when we cease to exist, is something that somebody will have to pick up. I intend to do what I can in making sure that the county itself as well looks at what we can do. People younger than 16 is not really the CPCA's remit. At the same time, this is, this is a spanning program that has relevance to quite a lot of different bodies. So I think we should possibly have those conversations going forward. Is there anything on that you can say, Niamh, about the conversations that are being held right now, or not?
So really positive interaction with colleagues continues, and we'll continue to maintain those conversations as the programme picks up.
There is it's the unknown bit is, of course, the unitary authority may have a different view as to responsibilities around skills and training in the future, bearing in mind that there might be a different political makeup relation to the unitary authority, and that's going to happen towards the end of the contract, which will not make the discussions that we have with the combined authority any easier, because we won't know who's running what or what the priorities might be. And it's something, I think, to bear in mind as we go forward.
Very good. Thank you for that, Mike. And Brian, are there any further comments on this? I think this is amazing, unalloyed, wonderful good news, as we know. When I joined this board 4 years ago, I did not know about this area of our work. I didn't know very much about it. Even after I learned that we did it, it took a while for me to get into the detail of the various things that are being achieved. And it's staggering, the reach that this program has and the unbelievable benefit it has brought to every single young person in education in Greater Cambridge. This is incredible when you think about it. It was a great pleasure to go to their conference earlier this year that they held around the corner from me, which was very convenient, at the Regional College. An absolutely wonderful event. And the thing that struck me the most was not so much seeing the children and the schools that attended and all the wonderful engagement that there was, but the engagement that there was on the part of the employers was really something to behold, because they like this kind of thing. For them, it's something that gives them quite a lot of good capital for the future, which they appreciate, and it was wonderful to see, because quite clearly they're not there to recruit the 6-year-olds on the spot, but they know that without the investment in the 6-year-olds, you don't get the 18-year-olds that you want. And this was really, really, really great to see. The program has been run wonderfully. It has some incredibly dedicated and enthusiastic people. I need to pay tribute to Form the Future, and I am absolutely delighted that we can appoint them to continue the work that they are doing. And I really, really hope that we can shout very loud about this, because I know that it's easier to get traction on things that make people angry, but this is something that should make people very, very happy. And, and I really, really hope that we keep talking about it. And there will be a substantial amount to bequeath when we're done with this, and I'm really hoping it gets taken up in the way it deserves. So with massive tribute to Anne and her team at Form the Future, and with massive tribute to everybody who's been involved, the recommendations in front of us are to note the progress across the skills programme and to agree to appoint Form the Future as the preferred bidder to deliver the next phase, which we have found money for and are very happy to invest into. Do I hear any dissent? I do not, and therefore we shall carry those recommendations unanimously. Thank you very much, Niamh and all involved. Item number 11, the SMART programme. So we go back to flashy lights, Dan. We also do not have any questions on this, so we will receive a presentation from Dan, joint assembly feedback and debate. Dan, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So the paper sets out 2 recommendations. The first is to note the progress of the SMART work stream in contributing to the wider GCP programme. And the second is to note the allocation of existing budget to 3 separate projects. So the first of those is to expand the work that we've been doing on East Road, looking at smart crossings. The second is to look at using the same technology for bus priority. And the third is aligning with some work that planning colleagues are doing, looking at how we can use AI in the engagement process. Just to pick up some of the highlights in the programme over the last 2 years. So we initially invested in 57 sensors across the city, which give us much better data about movement. That data is now being heavily used across the GCP and actually across the partner organisations, and that network has grown to 100 sensors. We've also put some dashboards onto Cambridgeshire Insights, which is a publicly available website and is being heavily used by the public as well. So we did quite a bit of work looking at travel information, and with the university we developed some travel screens which sit inside buildings. That network has now grown to 43 screens, and we've just gone live in the British Antarctic Survey, and we're talking to the Bradfield Centre at the moment. And we continue to feed data into Google Transit, Apple Maps and Citymapper, making sure that they've got the best possible real-time data from the city. We have been looking at traffic signals. We finished our pilots and the outputs of those, so we saw a 1% improvement in traffic flows. We found that we could better adjust the signals for cyclists, and it reduced the dwell time for pedestrians as well by 30%. And the pilot that we did on East Road also reduced dwell times for pedestrians by 36%. So we're now looking to build on the success of that and look at other junctions across the city and how we can apply this technology, talking to Signals colleagues in the County Council at the moment. And so Brian will raise with them the junction that you've mentioned, and the Joint Assembly also raised a junction that we're talking to the Signals team about at the moment. So the other big project is around the automated vehicles. So we now have 3 buses that have been fitted out with the technology. We're just completing the safety work, and we anticipate that they will start operating in mid-May. Thank you.
Dan, thank you very much indeed. Very, very interesting. What was the Assembly feedback on this?
Chair, you aren't asked to make any decisions on this yourselves, and so we asked questions to satisfy our fascination, I think, for this area of the programme, which was considerable. There was support for the way the current money is being used between priorities, the 3 points that Dan mentioned, and some discussion and questions around the safety of automated vehicles and the real-time bus data. But I think it's all written down. I don't think any of it really adds anything to people's satisfaction with what this programme is achieving.
And I think fascinating is exactly right. Questions for Dan or comments for Dan? Yes, Brian.
So some time ago, I described Cambridge as the cleverest city in the world, but with the stupidest transport system. And part of that was the signalisation that I've referred to earlier, and the lack of, and it's been much discussed locally, I know, in the city, over prioritisation to cyclists, for example, traffic flow, sharing of data, so whether the data on the lampposts was available or not. So it's really good to see progress being made so that we can actually have a traffic flow and control system that matches the cleverness of the city that it exists in. One minor irritation that still bugs me is peak time traffic signals only. So we have signals on some of our motorway junctions that continue all night when clearly there's no need for them. So it would, just a suggestion on your to-do list to have a conversation with our county colleagues to see if we can persuade them that such signals are rather unnecessary. But otherwise, thank you for this, and it's great to see us in the forefront of artificial intelligence contribution to this whole process, which does offer plenty of opportunities for significant improvement. So thanks for the work so far, and good luck with the rest of it going forward.
Thank you, Brian. Mike?
At the risk of actually demonstrating the stupidity of some of the people who use the Cambridge network, I need to ask a question around whether or not this applies to roadwork traffic lights, because one of the issues that the GCP faces repeatedly is about how those traffic lights work when there's a temporary measure up. And I fully understand if that's beyond and well beyond the scope because other things are happening. But it just strikes me that a lot of the critique around some of the road work that have taken place on behalf of the GCP over the course of the last 2 years, it quite often is to criticism of the way the signals work. And that may, as I say, may be beyond the scope of this project, but I would be interested to know the answer.
So we haven't looked at temporary traffic signals, but I will take that away as potentially an action point in the future.
I mean, it's an anecdotal point, okay? I had to go to Milton today, so I went up, what's the road by the side of Milton Road? But there was roadworks all the way along. The only roadwork that actually was stopping, the cycles were coming from Milton over the bridge, and yet there was still traffic lights stopping people going the other way. And it's that kind of, you can see why that would be a wind-up, because there's no way traffic could come the other way at that particular time in the morning. So it's that kind of mind, and I think on Milton Road, particularly, there's all sorts of issues being, so that might be a particular way of easing frustration of motorists and others about how the roadworks take place.
I am taking that Dan has made note of that, and it's useful, and it's useful feedback, because I think sometimes whilst we see, and we're very impressed by, you know, the breadth of this program and the success and everything, but, you know, sometimes the rarefied atmosphere at the top sort of belies the kind of some of the stuff that's happening on the ground, which is not in scope, but it's what people deal with every day. So if there's anything we can do, or even anything we can say about it, I think that's a very good point. Are there any further questions for Dan? Any comments on this at all? In which case, we are being recommended to note the progress on the smart work stream and the allocation of existing smart budget to the 3 projects set out in 4.2 and to be delivered in the next financial year. So if I hear no dissent on the recommendations, we shall take them as carried. Thank you very much indeed. This brings us to item number 12, which is the date of the next meeting. As you know, this is the last meeting of this executive board this electoral year, and so before I announce the date of the next meeting, which for those not wanting a spoiler is going to be the 10th of July, so it feels like a long way into the future at the moment. But as you know, we have county council and mayoral elections coming up on the 1st of May. And as the county council representative on this board, there is a chance that on the 10th of July, I may not be sitting here. So as such, I'd like to make some parting comments, if I may. It has been an amazing pleasure working with all of you here today and those who are not here today. This board has been a delight and a pleasure to chair, unbelievably well behaved, although not everyone has always done what I wanted, and I'm not looking at anyone in particular, but we've worked without exception in a way that has been collaborative, constructive, and thoroughly well-informed. I have to pay tribute to Rachel for the work that she did while she was here, and of course to Peter for stepping up when she left. They and their team have provided an enormous amount of support to us individually as members of this board, to the board collectively, and to me personally as chair, including through some of the most challenging times I've ever had as chair of this board, and they have frequently gone well above and beyond what would be expected of a council officer, and I doubt there's anyone doing this job anywhere else in the world as well as they do. So thank you very much, everybody, for what you have done. It has not been unnoticed. Throughout my chairmanship of this board, we have done some of our most consequential work. This is not something that I take personal credit for, because as we know, it's a finite program, which is going to be delivery heavy towards the end. We know that. But we have got off the ground some incredibly important stuff. As I have just been reminded, 150 kilometers of Greenway, which if I had prepared for this, I would have picked a destination from Cambridge that is that distance away, and I haven't, so I can't think of it. Something like Brighton, maybe. But it's an enormous amount of kilometers, or indeed miles. Very, very impressive. 3 busways, totaling well over £500 million investment in Greater Cambridge. So, you know, 5 challenging votes held on those busways at the county council under very, very difficult rules, with one more to come, and an incredibly beneficial, as we have just heard, an effective skills program, of which, if I'm proud of anything, I'm proud of that. It's been absolutely wonderful. And 3 autonomous vehicles bus routes about to open. They must have them somewhere else in the world, but it's incredibly, incredibly exciting that this is about to happen. And if I have played any role at all, no matter how small, in making these things happen, I am so proud, and you should all be, of what you have done. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mike, for sitting on this board. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for being here today when we weren't meant to. And I actually really, really hope to see you all on the 10th of July.
Is it worth, just as a conclusion, to say thank you to Elisa for all the work she's done over the course of the last, how many years did you say? How many years have you been on the chair? Yeah, 4. Some of the things, again, without which it becomes self-indulgent, some of the things you've had to put up with as a result of your work on here have been unspeakable and unmentionable, and your bravery is to be applauded. And so thank you very much for all you've done.